Hey guys, this is Alex Kubasek with ConvertSource. Today on the ConvertSource podcast, we're going to be going over specifically how to keep your campaigns thriving and really current in an ever-changing landscape of digital marketing. This stuff runs and changes a million miles a minute. Something that was true on Facebook a month ago, something that was true on LinkedIn a month ago is going to be completely different today than it was then. So this stuff is constantly changing. You need a source of information and you need a basis of comparison to be able to give you that direction in order to keep your campaigns thriving and current. So check it out today on the ConvertSource podcast, and we'll see you inside.
3, 2, 1.
When you want your leads and sales on autopilot and to accelerate your business, you come to the source. The ConvertSource podcast with Alex Kubasek. Let's go.
Okay, so today on the podcast, we're going to be going over specifically how to keep your campaigns current and thriving. One of the biggest problems that is kind of scary to a lot of business owners is the specificity of how to optimize your campaigns, keep them thriving, keep them going, keep them generating more of your value actions, whether that's leads, sales, etc. And one of the biggest reasons is that there's so much information out there. There are so many strings that people can tug on and blogs that people can read and YouTube videos and all of this. And there's so much noise. And it's really hard to know who to listen to. Now, I'm not going to sit here and I'm not going to say to you, hey, make sure you listen to the ConvertSource podcast. We're going to help you out the whole way. We want to make sure that we are a resource for you as we are the ConvertSource podcast. So we are your source of conversions. But in this case, there are a ton of resources that you can tug on, but we really want you to start to understand that the more zeroed in and focused you get on one particular source or a few particular sources of information, the better it's going to be for you. Because you're not going to have too many conflicting messages. They might all sound a little bit similar, but really everybody has their own way of doing something. And really the issue is that this landscape is constantly changing. And by landscape, I mean digital marketing. So something that was true 5 months ago, I hear all the time from clients who might be a little bit unhappy. Their results are a little bit different than 6 months ago. Things are constantly changing, and businesses need to understand that they have to keep an eye on their digital campaigns, whether it's advertising, whether it's email marketing, whatever it is. You need to make sure that you're paying attention to these things. It's a living and breathing organism that is constantly generating leads and sales for you. Obviously, it's literally a source of customer generation. If it is not running to its fullest potential, it is not going to give you the most quality that you're looking for. For example, think about it like your body, and think about it in terms of like health and fitness. You need to make sure that you're eating an apple a day keeps the doctor away. You need to make sure that you're exercising. You need to make sure that you're eating right. You need to make sure that you're keeping an eye and focusing on all these things, because as the adage says, all we have is our health, which is true. So in this case, since our digital campaigns are literally breath that is coming into our business, it's a source of influx into our business to help eliminate customer attrition. We need to make sure that we keep an eye on it. We need to make sure that we're feeding it the right healthy components, aka optimizations and pivots, to make sure that we are staying healthy with our campaign so that we can continue to generate more of the quality that we're looking for. I hope that makes sense. Now, of course, as usual, if you guys have any questions, feel free to reach out, support@convertsource.com. That is support@convertsource.com. We'd be happy to answer any of your questions. If you want to be on the show, if you want a question featured on the show, just let us know, support@convertsource.com. So somebody might say to you, or I've heard this several times, isn't digital marketing kind of like a set it and forget it thing? That is a misconception. A lot of people, whenever they are being sold like a course, for example, there is a lot of hype around the set it and forget it, because there's, all of these platforms are so automated. They're leveraging machine learning, AI, and all of these different components to create a set it and forget it situation. But that's not really the case. And the reason being is because something that was true yesterday might not be true today with these platforms. For excuse me, for example, I'm sure by now all business owners have heard of iOS 14.5. All right. So iOS obviously relates to Apple. And in this case, that was an update that was made to pretty much skew tracking. So, for example, if you were running like a Facebook advertising campaign, now, you all have probably heard about Facebook's Pixel or just pixels in general. Honestly, as we've talked about before, picture your audience being a big ocean and a pixel is a big fishing net that you throw out into the water and you let it run for a little while and drag it through the water and then bring up to see what you've caught. It's the exact same thing here with pixels. It's a big fishing net that you put into a target, like a niche pool, if you will, to bring up the fish, your purchases, your customers, etc. So in this case, iOS 14.5 made it so that you could not accurately track your leads and sales and your metrics and KPIs on Facebook and Instagram. Essentially, it was like a big slap. So with e-commerce, for example, so like selling products, goods, and things like that online, if you were advertising those on Facebook or Instagram, you were probably tracking less than 50% of your actual sales. And the reason being is because the pixel for Facebook and Instagram was kind of like rendered like a moot point because it wasn't able to track conversions effectively because Apple's update here with iOS 14.5 gave users the opportunity to opt out of tracking. And so since the majority of people have the common misconception that ads are a bad thing, they decided to not be able to track. So thus, advertisers lost so much of their tracking. And so obviously you can see how that would affect your KPIs, your numbers, your ROAS, your leads, your cost per lead, your cost per, sale and things like that. And it's really hard for you to be able to optimize and track appropriately to make sure that your campaigns are being profitable for you, as we've talked about many times in the past. Now, that kind of goes toward this whole set it and forget it thing, that there's like a break. There's a huge gap now after this. So in this case, we were talking about, okay, well, I thought we were supposed to be able to set it and forget it. That is true to an extent because you're able to drop in a piece of content, let's say, for example, and let it start to percolate into your audience, get data, etc. Now, the thing is that you constantly have to be monitoring it to make sure that links haven't broken, to make sure that your cost per click is within the target that you're looking for. Otherwise, you need to make a pivot to like new messaging or a new audience and things like that. So not only that, in terms of making sure that without like an iOS 14.5 update, making sure that we're hitting our numbers as we've talked about in other episodes. But in this case, now that with iOS 14.5, we're not able to track our KPIs appropriately, like what do? We don't know if our cost per click is accurate. We don't know if our click-through rate is accurate. We don't know if our cost per acquisition is accurate because all of these things are left in question because of Apple's update. So what do? Now, some of you that are listening to this may have heard of things like Hyros, AnyTrack, other different like third-party tracking devices. And you might be thinking, well, if the Facebook Pixel was, slapped down and can't track, why would these be able to? It's because Apple's update was really only geared toward things like Facebook and Instagram. Something like a Hyros or an AnyTrack and things like that are third-party tracking sources, and I'll put all of these links in the description for you guys. So for Hyros and AnyTrack and other things of that nature, they have their own pixel that you can place on your website that will essentially bring in that conversion data, but on their platform, not on Facebook or Instagram. So you're able to track so much more accurately. I think it's within like 3 to 5% accuracy. Now, of course, nothing is ever going to be 150,000% accurate, but it's a whole hell of a lot better than 40% accuracy or less on something like Facebook or Instagram. So you can see where if we're talking about if we're only able to report 40% of our actual conversion, that's a big problem because we're missing the other 60%. However, if we use like these third-party data sources like this that are not reliant on like Facebook's pixel, we're able to now make sure that we're back on track and we're actually able to make accurate and more intelligent data-driven decisions. And so that's coming back full circle to really the theme of the show. That's exactly why we need to make sure that it's not just a set it and forget it situation, because your campaigns could have gone awry and you wouldn't have even known it because you weren't paying attention to it. So, the message of this entire episode today is being able to keep your campaigns thriving, but also current. So we've kind of talked about like the thriving a little bit, making sure that we're keeping our eye on it to make sure that we're within our KPIs, to make sure if we need to make any pivots, to keep them thriving, to keep them going forward, keep it so that they're achieving our targets. In terms of staying current, we started to touch on that a little bit because if you're a business owner that didn't really pay attention, or, you had campaigns running and, iOS came out. Now, iOS has been out for about a year now. So effectively, April 23rd or 24th of 2021 is whenever it was starting to get rolled out to campaigns and to ad accounts the world over. And then you started to notice like a decline, and you started noticing a lot of panic, a lot of freak out. There were, press releases everywhere about it. And I think Facebook lost like billions of dollars in terms of shares and things like that over this. And you've heard of lookalike audiences. Lookalike audiences were starting to get rendered moot because lookalike audiences were for the most part based off of Facebook's pixel. So like, for example, you could create lookalike audiences, or essentially for those of you who might not know, you would take a seed list, and let's say that you had your pixel on your website to track purchases. And let's say that you wanted to make a lookalike audience off of people who purchased. So people who mirror those qualities so that we can find more of them, make our campaigns smarter, make the conversion or cost per conversion a lot lower, et cetera, to start optimizing. Here in this case, because of iOS 14.5, the pixel was not able to capture data really that would make it so that whenever you created a lookalike audience on Facebook, it would be accurate or close to as accurate. So you'll notice that a lot of people were starting to complain about things like lookalike audiences. Now, the trick around that, there's two actually, and this is a little bit of a tangent, but what the hell? There's a little bit of a trick around that. So, in a sense, the more data that you feed something, right, the more nutrition, let's call data points, fields, for example, that are first name, last name, phone number, all those types of things, email addresses, etc. The more data, the more nutrition you can feed the algorithm, the better. It's going to be more optimized. It's going to be a healthier campaign, right? In this case, here we say, okay, we want an audience that looks like these people that have purchased from us before, but we want to find more of them. So what you would do is you would basically get as many data points as you could. I'm talking first name, last name, phone numbers, email addresses, address, zip codes, cities, states, countries, as many points as you could possibly give to the algorithm or to the lookalike algorithm to build and really capture as many of those data points in the mirrored lookalike audiences as humanly possible to make it more accurate. So the other way of doing it is if, like, let's say, for example, you are a company who thrives off of leads. Let's say that your big thing is lead generation. Well, Facebook actually has what's called instant forms. It used to be called lead forms. Now it's called instant forms. But what you would do is you would run a campaign and you would optimize your campaign objective for instant forms. And so after a while, you would be able to get a lot of those forms filled out. And since that particular optimization is right on Facebook, the entire transaction takes place right on Facebook, you would obviously, that wouldn't be relying on a pixel that Apple basically cut off tracking from, like Facebook or Instagram to the conversion on your website with somebody who's using an iOS device. So since this transaction lead is taking place right on Facebook, that is an extremely accurate contact information. And then you're going to be able to build a very accurate, very functionable lookalike audience off of those people who submitted the instant form. Now, you're probably thinking, well, I am an e-commerce brand. Well, you can use Facebook Shop. You can like integrate with your like Shopify website or something on Facebook to be able to create what's called like an instant experience or a shop where that transaction can take place right on Facebook or Instagram. So it's the exact same thing as the instant forms. So I would highly encourage trying and testing those out as well, because then you're able to build more accurate data to be able to advertise better and get a lower cost per acquisition on these platforms. So yes, that was a very long tangent. I apologize. But like these are the types of optimizations, these are the types of strategies, these are the types of things that you need to be listening to on a daily, weekly, monthly basis so that you can keep your campaigns thriving and current. Excuse me. So here, there are so many different blogs, there are so many different YouTube videos, there are so many different sources. Like I was saying in the beginning of the show, there's so many different sources that people can tug on, they can pull on to be able to keep their campaigns optimized. I would not listen to them all. A very simple Google search will be able to say like top digital marketing resources of 2022 or 2023 or 2024 or 2025. Because since this is always changing, there are so many different resources out there. And I honestly, we're going to want to make sure that the Convert Source podcast is one of them, right? But in this case, we really want to make sure that we're only listening to a few different ones, right? We want to make sure that we're keeping things as streamlined as possible, not too many conflicting messages so that we can test something, evaluate, optimize if we need to. Now, kind of going back to this whole set it and forget it thing, let's say that you have a campaign that's really crushing it. It's surpassing your ROAS or surpassing your cost per acquisition cost that's your target. Let's say that it's doing extremely well. Well, you might think to yourself, okay, well, since it's doing really well, I'll come back in 2 weeks. The problem with that is that a link might break. For whatever reason, your cost per click might start going up because you have other competition that's coming in and bidding on and competing for the exact same eyeballs that you are. And they might be a little bit bigger in their budget than you. So that's why we've talked about in past episodes, and feel free to check those out. But knowing your targets and KPIs to stay profitable, that is so increasingly important. You'll notice that, like we've talked about in the past, every one of these shows is really a perpetuating piece of knowledge on the past one to make sure that everything is flowing and touching one another, just like the foot bone is connected to this bone, and this bone is connected to this bone, and this bone is connected to this bone, so that we can make sure that everything is running in a fluid, streamlined, automated fashion. Because at the end of the day, ConvertSource here, we're all about putting your leads and sales on autopilot. So we need to make sure that everything is talking to one another. So I would highly recommend diving into your campaigns, depending on your budget, a couple times a week. Now, let's say, for example, your budget is only $10 a day. It's totally fine. I'm not going to be one of those people that say, oh, you can run the most successful Facebook advertising or Google advertising campaign on the planet with only $2.50 a day. That is a hook that most digital marketing self-proclaimed quote unquote gurus use to be able to get you to listen to them, because they already know that you're thinking, oh my gosh, I don't have a ton of money to spend, but I know I need to be here. But this guy's telling me, okay, $2.50 is great. Let's go with this guy. It's a hook. What I would rather do is I would rather you guys focus on your KPIs that you're looking to hit and work backwards to create a budget. And I believe last week's episode was about, or the week before was about, creating effective budgets. So we really need to make sure that we, of course, know our numbers. We need to make sure that we are focusing on profitability. We need to make sure that, and I think I'm coming in and out here. I got a phone call. What's going on here? And we need to make sure that we're only not only focusing on our numbers, but we are also keeping an eye on our campaigns as an overall, but also at a micro level too, like KPIs, like cost per click, click through rate, ROAS, cost per lead, etc. I highly recommend doing this a few times a week. And the biggest reason is because something might happen that you don't know about. It's not Facebook's or Instagram or Google's job to say, hey, you have a link that's broken. But if you notice, like, for example, that out of the blue, your lead flow has slowed down or your sales has slowed down, you're obviously going to rush right over to the campaign and make sure that your campaign is producing appropriately. However, I would say that if you just would have taken a few minutes every day or every couple of days to make sure that your campaign is still running correctly and smoothly, you wouldn't have to worry about your cost per acquisition flying through the roof because something broke in your campaign. So you have to keep your finger on the pulse with these campaigns because, like I said, it's a living and breathing organism. We need to pay attention to. We need to feed it with healthy nutrition because what you put in is what you're going to get out. It's 100% true. And of course, as always, if you guys need help with this stuff, support@convertsource.com. Just ask us a question. Let me know, hey, Alex, I love what you were talking about the other day in terms of KPIs. How do I figure out my KPIs, your benchmarks, the things that the targets that you need to hit to be profitable? We'll have a conversation. We'll work on them. If you want to be on the show, let me know. But of course, as always, I need to make sure that you guys are progressing in a successful fashion because that's a metric of mine. That's a KPI of mine. That's a KPI. That's a benchmark of ours here at ConvertSource. We have lofty goals here to make sure that we are delivering really great messaging and really great content and really great value to make sure that your business is thriving and it's helping other people. It's like the invisible hand of helping people, right? You guys have all heard of like the ripple effect, the invisible hand in the economy. It's the same thing here. It's a metric of ours. What I want to make sure that everybody understands with this show today is that it is not a set it and digital advertising, digital marketing as like a messaging ecosystem, an engine to your end user is not a set it and forget it solution. It's not something that you can just say like, all right, this is so much easier. I can only spend $2.50 a day, not even have to go back to it ever again until I want to turn it off and I'm going to be rich. That is not what this is at all. And if that is something that you were operating off of, I am very sorry. Because you may have been spending a lot of money and a lot of time doing something that was not correct. But you would at least have some data. At $2.50 a day, it might take you a little bit longer to get some data. But at the same time, you don't need to be spending thousands of dollars a day. The only way that I would recommend that is if you've been hitting your KPIs consistently with small incremental scales for long enough to be able to say, okay, guys, we've really been paying attention to this. We've been hitting our numbers consistently. We have been incredibly profitable. We've been scaling slowly and the numbers are still staying the same or better. Let's put some more behind this. I would highly recommend not scaling too fast because it's kind of like a quarterback overthrowing his receiver. Your quarterback might have a gun, but instead of throwing it, 45 yards, he threw it all the way across the field and the receiver can't run that fast. So in this case, the quarterback is your budget and the receiver is kind of your audience here. They might not be there with the extra amount that you've spent, they might not be there. So you might not even have to spend that much. But the only way you're going to know to do that is if you're paying attention to your campaigns. That is you got to have a microscope on these things sometimes to make sure that your campaigns are profitable, you're hitting your targets so that you know exactly how you're going to be able to scale to get in front of more people, get more eyeballs, get more conversions, help more people, etc. Of course, like I said before, I'm going to be giving you guys a couple of resources that you're going to be able to take a peek at so that you can make sure that you have a right direction. You've got a few things to make sure that you are staying current. This isn't, you're a business owner. You might not be a digital marketer. So, of course, I don't expect you to be hopping on to the ConvertSource podcast every single day. You're more than welcome to if you'd like. But I don't expect you to be jumping onto all of these resources every single day, fretting and sweating and saying, oh my gosh, do I know everything about this? It changes quickly, but not quickly enough for you to be able to be losing sleep at night if you only looked at your campaign a couple of days ago. But I want you to have these resources, and I want you to have the mentality to make sure that you're spending time with your campaigns. You're paying attention. You're spending time with them because they will cheat on you at some point. Warren Buffett always said, anybody, if they're driving long enough, is going to get a ticket. Like if you have a cop on your tail for 500 miles, you're going to get a ticket. Why? Because even though when you started your journey, your trip, you had the right fluid, you had perfectly good tires, you had all your taillights and headlights, your turn signals, everything was fine. But at some point down your journey, your campaign, if you will, something is going to break. Because, like, for example, if you're leveraging something like GoDaddy, or you're leveraging, whomever your hosting is, they might have an outage, and that affects you because then your site isn't going to load. And so now your traffic is going to a broken website. So your cost per acquisition is going to go up. Your KPIs are going to go haywire. That's why you have to make sure that you're paying attention to your campaigns. So guys, I really hope that this show is really helpful for you, kind of getting you a little bit more focused on what to be looking for to keep your campaigns moving forward and progressing and optimizing and really doing well for you. Making sure that you're eliminating customer attrition, making sure that you're keeping new blood coming into your business, make sure that your KPIs are at a point where you're staying profitable and hitting your targets. I want to make sure that we are pointing you in the right direction for things. And for example, if you were talking about email marketing campaigns, there are KPIs that you do need to be hitting per your industry to make sure that you're getting the right open rates, the click-through rates, things like that, to say, okay, I know that if I have 1 million people that I sent an email to, or 1,000 people that I sent an email to, and I know that I got 22% of them to open it, and if I get 10% of those 22% that opened it to click, I know that I'm going to get 2 people that actually buy my $197 course or something like that. Knowing those numbers and paying attention to your campaigns makes it so that you can keep them thriving and keep them current. Keep them up to date. Make sure that you're paying attention to them. And of course, if you guys want to know more on this subject, support@convertsource.com. Shoot us an email. Let us know what you're thinking, how we're doing. Are we providing the right value for you guys? We want to make sure that we're helping you. We want to make sure that we're providing you with the source for conversions, hence ConvertSource. That is a metric that we measure ourselves by. Are we providing you with the right information to help your business grow? Support@convertsource.com. Reach out to us. If you want to be on the show, we're now starting to accept guests. If you just have a question, you don't want to come on the show, you're a little camera shy, whatever it is, let us know. We want to be able to help you. So guys, I hope today was really helpful for you. I hope that you are making your life extraordinary, and I want to make sure that we are helping you guys help your end user, because that is a part of our overall goal of helping over 31 million businesses around the world to touch the lives and solve problems and present solutions to the end user. So guys, thank you so much for watching, listening, wherever you're consuming this content. Have a fantastic week, and we'll see you next week. Thanks, guys.
When you want your leads and sales on autopilot and to accelerate your business, you come to the source. The ConvertSource Podcast with Alex Kubasek. Let's go.